You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Friday. Wow, what is up with my voice? We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I'm your man on the ground as a whole publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And, you know, I've long said that I'm not in the business of doing podcasts when I don't have anything to talk about. However, I sat and racked my brain, and I don't have anything to say that we didn't cover, particularly in the mailbag yesterday. That said, I'm just going to have a general conversation and see where it takes us when it comes to my thoughts about where this team stands. Maybe some of that will be review, maybe all of it will be review, maybe it'll all be new. We'll find out as I basically Michael Scott my way through this thing, because as of yet, there's nothing new that has really come out of fall camp. We haven't met with any of the coaches or anything. We have our first media availability on Sunday. Interesting day. You would have thought that the weekend would be safe. It is not. So there it is. I'm glad it wasn't Saturday. I'm venturing to the great north, not Michigan, and it's actually not that far north. I'm going to Canada on Saturday, so it is. I'm going there and coming back, so it's good that it'll be kind of confined, constricted. But anyway, we have talked ad nauseum about the running back battle, but there's some other things that we haven't really necessarily gotten into the nitty gritty with. There was the release of the roster finally on Wednesday night. Normally I'm there like refreshing. I'm pretty sure I had a spreadsheet from last year, and then I just made a whole new one, which was very time consuming. So while I'm sure everyone else in my industry has one, because it's always a good idea so that you can track everything, their weight gains and losses and all of that, instead of just trying to figure it out otherwise. But not as many significant gains, like crazy, like Joel Honigford from 2020 to 2021. And I can't remember who it was. There was someone who had lost a ton. I'm curious to see if I do have that spreadsheet, because there was someone last year that had just an insane weight gain. I'm going to be really mad. Yeah, I do have that spreadsheet. I'm modified August 2020. See, I'm really mad at myself already because I just did so much more work that I didn't have to do. Well, it's pulling up right now. So the biggest, looking at last year, you had a couple guys that really put on some big weight. Jaden McBurrows, Javier Dunlap. Some of these guys have lost weight since. Keyshawn Bennett. Joel Honigford had lost the 48 pounds. Louis Hansen. So there were some guys last year that had, and like there wasn't many that had that big of differences, but there were a few. There was, and of course this escapes me as soon as I try to say it, but yet you had Trevor Keegan dropped a ton, for instance. He was a pretty big one. Here, I have it right here. Of course, if I just had these things pulled up, it would make my life so much easier, and yours as well. Tristan Bounds had gained 29, Raheem Anderson 18, Rhett Anderson, who's a kicker and punter, 16. Ikawana up another 15, so he's up to 321 when you consider that last year he had gained 25. He was 281, so he went from 281 to 321. So that's what you want out of a guy like that. But I mean, you had like 20 guys that gained 10 pounds or more, so that's pretty big. I think the big one for me, there's two big ones for me, or three big ones for me on this. Actually, you know what? Let's make it four. Sorry. Junior Colson going up another 10. Blake Corum going up another 10. Mozzie Smith going up 11. And Eric All going up another 10. Let's add a fifth and add Chris Jenkins, who went up another 10, but he's put, I think, 292 or something like that. at his weigh-in. He's not listed as that on the roster, but 292 is what he had posted himself. So those are pretty big. Those are pretty big gains as far as losses are concerned. The biggest ones are Julius Welskoff, who lost 22. Trevor Keegan lost 19. So those are the big ones. So what that means for some of these lineman type is that a guy like Ike Iwunnah maybe has a chance to be a contributor, right? Because he is now fully of the size of what they would need. Kenneth Grant coming in at 357, number one in the team, as far as the biggest guy, which again lends to the theory that he is the mystery freshman. We won't necessarily know about him when we talk to the offensive guys on Sunday, but at least it'll be interesting to see if he and Mason Graham, I believe, is up to like 317 off out of my memory, my very horrid memory. So it'll be interesting to see how that pays dividends. I am excited. I am more excited about the defensive line, kind of now knowing some of this, right? Having Ike Iwunnah at that weight. Rayshon Benny didn't really change. He was 292, I believe. See, I don't remember what I did this morning, and I randomly just remember that. Having those guys, having the two freshman defensive tackles being 317 and 354, right? That's huge. Having your star linebacker really be a thumper at like 6'2", 235 pounds. Having Eric All continuously just gain and gain and gain. What did Eric All come in at? I think it was a good 50 pounds lighter than what he is now. I mean, he looked the part. Like watching him at Big Ten Media Days, walking around in his suit was just really like just hulking. And having him potentially having that much more weight as a blocker, having that ability as well as a receiver, going on with Luke Schoonmaker, who's already a big guy, that's huge. Julius Welskoff being someone who's now looking to move back to the outside, where I think is where he would thrive. That's where, I've recalled this before. I will recall it again. I remember being at a camp summer of 2016, I believe it was. And it was after Rashawn Gary had, he was on campus, but he wasn't, and he was there enrolled and all of that stuff. But, he hadn't gone through any kind of cycle yet. But he was still considered the number one guy in the country. But watching like him, maybe it was 2017, because I think like Chase Winovich was a part of it. And I remember thinking like he was already kind of a star type guy. Having some of those guys going through this drill, Julius Welskoff it was an offensive camp, but he was the only defensive player. So he was getting put through the ringer by Greg Madison, and just watching him go through these drills. Couldn't tape any of them. Greg Madison saw us and was like, no, untape this, please. Watching him go through these drills, he was right there with Rashawn Gary and Carlo Kemp. Carlo obviously flexed inside, but it'll be interesting to see if he has some of that. And Brandon Collier, his former coach overseas, had long has been touting like people don't understand that this guy is a freak, and he is a multi-sport athlete. He's a guy that pretty sure I don't want to say that, but he skied and stuff like that. Having him lean out, I think, could be big for that defensive line. With that in mind, with everything that we kind of see and know with this defensive line, I am starting to be of the opinion that that is not the thing that I'm scared of the most on the defense anymore, in a bad way. I'm kind of, unfortunately for George Hilo, and it's nothing to do with him. Sorry, my mic is dropping if you're watching. I keep on blocking my face. I'm starting to kind of revert back to the linebackers being the position group on the defense that I am least confident in. I mean, we can add safety to that to some degree. But, I mean, I still feel really good about the safety room. I like RJ Moten, Rod Moore. Makari Page looked pretty good in the spring game. But, yeah, I think that the linebackers now, it's like, okay, Junior Colson's a known commodity. We don't really necessarily know how some of these other guys will do. Michael Bennett looked really good in a game as a linebacker, really. I mean, he not to say he didn't look like they looked bad in every other game, but when I say good, I mean that Minnesota game, he looked awesome. And then he was just kind of extant after that. So, Nakai Hill-Green's another guy that's up 11 pounds, so that could be interesting as well. You have those three guys, and then you hope to see like Joey Velasquez, Jaden Hood. Those are the guys that also need to step up, because that's the thing. I can mention 6 guys, and that's really it. I'll add Jimmy Rolder to that, but he's a true freshman. Junior Colson as a true freshman was a pleasant surprise. I mean, it wasn't necessarily a surprise, but that was a pleasant development. You can't necessarily count on that from freshmen to be awesome linebackers. Now, I don't think that Michigan last year had necessarily elite linebacker play. And usually teams don't make it to the college football playoff unless they have that. And obviously they had super elite defensive ends or edge rushers or outside linebackers, I guess. You need elite linebacker play to really do it. Michigan's going to need a lot from a lot of places. Let's continue talking about the defense and some of this stuff, because I still do have some thoughts. But before we do, betonline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your betting needs. Find your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, see, we found some footing. Of course, we tend to. But I do feel like we've talked a lot about these things without having new information. I am ready for new information for us to discuss. Thankfully, we will get that on Sunday. Does that mean we'll have a Sunday podcast? Maybe, but I would not hedge my bets on it. We will see. But the goal is to really ramp this thing up now that we are in season mode. But the problem is we are in season mode without anything to necessarily discuss that we haven't discussed before. Anyway, defensively, I really do kind of buy into Jim Harbaugh's, and this was without Jim Harbaugh saying it, but he had the sneaking suspicion that this defense could be better than last year's group. I kind of tend to agree with that, just because, here's the thing is, I talked to Joel Klatt. You talk to anybody and they're like, I don't know that Michigan's defense can be that good again without those two ends. Why not? Michigan's defense was what, 21st in the country? Michigan, that was the second worst statistical year defensively for Michigan under Jim Harbaugh. Certainly it can be better, right? Yes, it looked really good when it came to rushing the passer. Yes, that changed a lot. It could still be better even than that. Now, that's going to take a lot from a lot of different players. I am starting to get more and more stoked about the back end. I know we talked about the safeties here momentarily. Corners is just a potentially very loaded group. Steve Klingskill finally having a full, a year, as well as having the offseason. Because remember, Steve Klingskill did not show up until Maurice Linguist went to Buffalo after spring ball. So that kind of changes some things, right? Now he's able to, we know the kind of job he did at Kentucky, and then you couple him with a known commodity in DJ Turner, who everyone kind of expects to be one of the better, if not best, corners in the conference. Javon Green, who has started games. Mike Sainristil, who seems to be sticking and holding his own. Will Johnson. And then you bring in all of these other talented freshmen. Wherever they end up, we'll find out. Zeke Berry, though, super excited about him. I know we talked about him last week, but super excited about Zeke Berry. So I really like that group. Safeties is not as deep as it had been at one point in time. And it seemed like Michigan had just this incredible deep safety room, which to some degree never matriculated, right? Like Jordan Morant never became a thing. But certainly I like the RJ Moten, Rod Moore, Makari Page trio. I think RJ Moten certainly is a bona fide leader. And I'm excited to see. I think that he might not have the flashiest career as a safety, but I do think he'll have that stabilizing force like Jared Wilson had. So then you got the linebackers and then the front, which I'm suddenly just like giddy about because it's just I see all this bulk in the middle, knowing that Mozzie Smith is just an absolute beast, knowing that year over year players tend to either stagnate, and when I say stagnate, stay the same or get better. And if he at least stays the same, it's going to be a good situation. If he gets better, if Chris Jenkins gets better, Jalen Harrell, some of these guys that we've seen maybe a little bit, but haven't seen a ton, Mike Morris, Taylor Upshaw, I think that Braden McGregor, who I'm obviously super excited about, I think that could bode really well. Offensively, and I got asked this question by my roommate on the Jamie Morris M Zone show earlier today. What are you more concerned with? The player battles, player development, all of that, or the influx of new coaches? This is the least concerned I have ever been, and maybe it's completely unwarranted. Maybe it's 100% unwarranted. The least concerned I have ever been about a situation where you have new coordinators on both sides of the ball. Because Michigan is running the same system on both sides of the ball. Sharon Moore was co-offensive coordinator last year. That does not mean that he was out there also calling plays and stuff like that. It certainly means he was giving his input. Think of him as assistant to the offensive coordinator. But he knows the ins and outs. Matt Weiss, I thought we've talked about it on this show many a time when he was hired, when Josh Gaddis left, that Matt Weiss is imminently beyond capable and qualified to be an offensive coordinator. My thought was that was the whole thing. Maybe they're preparing him for an offensive coordinator role here. Maybe they're preparing him for an offensive coordinator role in the NFL. He's got that capability. He's got that mind. And I've heard people kind of complain sometimes about him, whether it's coaching or the Jim Harbaugh Minnesota stuff, whatever. I don't care about any of that. Dude came from the NFL at one of the best places in the NFL. It's not like he's like, oh yeah, dude was a quality control guy with the Jacksonville Jaguars. No, he was running the best running offense that the NFL has essentially ever seen. So I love those guys being in charge of it. How their play calling goes, that we'll find that out. They've got time to work that out. Defensively, people constantly talk about Jesse Minter. I see Buckeyes doing this very erroneously. Be like, Vanderbilt? Good luck. We got the guy from Oklahoma State, in a league where there's no running. All right. Well, Jesse Minter was also a Baltimore Ravens guy. No one can win at Vanderbilt at the moment. I feel bad for my former colleague Barton Simmons is over there, but Vanderbilt is Vanderbilt is like dropping Northwestern into the SEC, right? Except for Northwestern's had some success because there's some parity between the two different divisions. There's not parity in the Big Ten. There is in the SEC. Georgia, Florida are on one side. Alabama, LSU are on the other. Yeah, good luck. Only SEC school that's got, well, not only. Florida is actually an AAC school, but aside from that, the only SEC school that's like worth something from an academic perspective. Vanderbilt is just generally not good. I remember being depressed in 2006 as a student. I was in Las Vegas with my mom. We're in the cab ride back to the airport. My mom says the cab driver, yeah, my son goes to Michigan. And he's like, oh, good football school. And I'm like, I don't know. He barely blew out Vanderbilt. You know? Jesse Minter done just fine in his career. Vanderbilt's a hard place. It just is. It's essentially Rutgers. No offense to Rutgers, or all offense to Rutgers. I'm not sure. So with that said, I am more concerned with how the players do. But at the same time, I'm not that concerned. And that's going to lead us to my final thoughts, and we're going to run through it here momentarily. Pretty sure I've already done what I'm going to do, but we're going to do it again. If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you are depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor. Ready? Delicious, indulgent cookie dough. Covered in chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. Let me introduce you to your new favorite. Cookie dough chunk puffs have a light and chewy texture. Real cookie dough chunks. And of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Run to Built.com to snag a box for you and the family. It will be the perfect treat, or you can really find a good hiding place and hoard them all for yourself. I do that all the time. Every time I get a box, I'm usually putting it in my room, hiding it somewhere, because I've told you the story about my roommate eating a whole box of a limited edition, thinking I'll just buy another one. I ate a whole box. It's 18. I had 2. It's 16 in 3 days. That's how good Built Bar is. Like all Built Bars, the new cookie dough chunk puff is covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and tasty. Chocolate covered cookie dough with light, fluffy texture. So good. What's great about Built is that all their bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff, whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or just need to grab a quick bite. Built is the perfect protein bar. They taste better than a candy bar. Ditch the calories, fat, and sugar. Grab yourself a Built bar. Go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off of your next order. That's Built.com. Promo code LOCKED15. 15% off. Built.com. All right, we got a couple minutes left here. One of the things that, now I got ripped by saying this term, misnomer, on an Ohio State site. So maybe I don't know what it means, but this is how I use it. That's how I do it all the time. I've been doing that, and find out, I remember writing an article and saying, using nay, N-E-E, as a net, yeah, but. I use it as a synonym for but. And my friend Corinne's like, yeah, you're not using that right. Sure, we all do it. Sometimes embarrassing as a writer when we use something wrong. But anyway, the experience factor. I think it's funny because there's definitely a narrative out there that Michigan is inexperienced on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, offensively, sometimes people aren't necessarily breaking it down. They just see 57% or whatever like that. So it's kind of funny how that works, right? Because, yeah, it's a lot on one side of the ball, but here are my projected starters on defense. All right, you ready? Let's get this going here. So we will do essentially 4 linemen. I know they run a 3-4. I'm still doing 4-3 because it's essentially the same. So we've got, as starters, this is what I'm predicting: Mike Morris, Mozzie Smith, Chris Jenkins, Taylor Upshaw. 2 of those guys have started games before, right? Okay, with me. Junior Colson, we'll say Michael Barrett, and we're going to go with Nikhil Green. Those are 3 guys who've played before. Colson, not really necessarily a starter, but kind of was, right? Michael Barrett started games before. Nikhai Hill-Green was a starter. Although I think Colson kind of replaced him, and that's where that was. So there we go. Safety, RJ Moten started games. Rod Moore didn't start games, but was a key contributor down the stretch. All right. DJ Turner started games. And then I think it's going to be a platoon of Jamon Green, Will Johnson, and then your nickel will be Mike Sainristil. Sainristil obviously started games at wide receiver, but not on that side of the ball. Will Johnson's never played a college down, but the other two started games. That is an entire defense full of guys who have played significant minutes. There is no one that I'm mentioning outside of Will Johnson that hasn't played significant minutes in significant moments. Offensively, Michigan replaces Hassan Haskins, Andrew Vistardis, and Crindy. Name's not Crindy. And Andrew Stuber. The Arrested Development reference for y'all. We don't know who's going to necessarily replace Hassan's production, but we know that Blake Corum is going to start. Olu Oluwatimi started games at Virginia. Trente Jones played somewhat sparingly, but still played in some key moments. Literally, 100% of your team is experienced. Maybe not starters experience, but experienced. 100%. And I think the most important thing, Michigan returning the same system with at least familiar coordinators to some degree. Minter might be new, but using the same everything. We're just continuing where everything left off. In communication with Mike McDonald, so that certainly lessens the learning curve. It wasn't Michigan losing an assistant by them being fired, as we've tended to see. It's Michigan losing an assistant because he got a promotion to the NFL. So that's great. It's not leaving on bad terms. It's everything. With that in the schedule, maybe I'm just hyping myself up here. I just really think everything plays out in Michigan's perfect benefit this year. Next year, yeah, J.J. McCarthy better be ready because he's going to have to shoulder a lot next year. But this year, I'm feeling pretty good, and I'm feeling pretty good about the lines on both sides. All right, well, 28 minutes. Sitting down here after having my head in my hands, trying to figure out what I was going to say. I talked for almost a half hour, so that tells you Michigan football is really almost here. All right, so we will talk to you soon, whether that's Sunday or Monday. Probably Monday. In an ideal world, I would like to have one on Sunday after the press conference, after I've gotten some writing done, but we will see. Don't hold your breath. But we are back in season mode regardless. So that means 5 next week, hopefully at the very least. All right, thanks for watching and or listening. We will be back when we're back. Talk to you then. Peace.